Hello and welcome to this episode of the AppDevANGLE. My name is Paul Nashawaty. I'm the practice lead for the AppDev practice at theCUBE Research. Today we are here to talk about Prodacity 2025, where government tech leaders came together to really drive that lead challenges that they're seeing. But Sam Weston is joining me today. Sam, great to have you here.
Thank you for having me here.
Yeah, it's a great event. What were your thoughts?
I really enjoyed the event. I had a lot of fun. I mean, Nashville's always a great time. We got to go to Category 10, great venue. But the sessions themselves at the event and the attendees at the event were just so much fun.
Yeah, it really was. I mean, what I really liked about it is Prodacity, as talking about in the name of the event, about productive, creating things that were really optimized and working on operational efficiencies. That was really kind of the draw of the event, right? And when we're looking at government spend, there's a lot of changes happening with the new administration that's in office. A lot of things happening that really came out of the event. What are your thoughts?
Well, first I have to stop you and say that Brian would be so upset if you didn't say Prodacity. It's not Prodacity, it's Prodacity. You're talking about production. So I'm had to stop there. But overall, I think that the timing of the event was great. We do have Doge coming into effect now. So many of the attendees had a lot to talk about when it came to Doge and how that's impacting their everyday jobs. And, the overall theme of the event was optimization and efficiency. So many of the sessions aligned to that. And it was just really interesting.
Yeah, and that's not just happening in GovTech, right? We are seeing this across the practice. I mean, when you and I sit on calls and we talk to all the organizations that are trying to focus on what they're doing, the number one challenge that we hear from CIOs is modernization of applications and doing this efficiently, right? The barriers they run into are skill gap issues and complexity. And those are the themes that came out of the event, right? We saw that there's a lot of complexities, a lot of challenges that happen. And those challenges that happen, really, this event was really trying to drive, like, how do you fix that? How do you overcome those barriers, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just from the government perspective, but overall, we're seeing this, right?
Yeah, I mean, a big part of the event was breaking through the bureaucracy. So especially in government, you have all of the red tape, there's extra challenges to get things done. And, everybody loves efficiency, probably not more people than me. Because when it comes to operational efficiency, that's where I shine. So it was interesting for me to see, especially talking to some of the participants about their challenges, just having people let go from their jobs, whether not necessarily through Doge and all the layoffs that we're seeing, but just in everyday life. A year ago, trying to get rid of the low performers. So we see the skill gap issues in our research, but we're also seeing people that are being held in jobs where they're not necessarily performing. And that was part of this Prodacity event, was how do you break through the bureaucracy? How can we reduce some of that red tape and actually drive efficiency?
Yeah, I agree. And I want to kind of lean in on one of my predictions that I was kind of talking about. We got a prediction series that we have, there's a number of videos out here in posts that we're talking about. But one of the predictions we talked about was the increase in growth of applications that are happening throughout 2025. This is also a reflection of what we were seeing at the event. And when I was predicting that low-code and no-code solutions are really going to kind of take off and grow. Actually, what I predicted is based on our research, that 30% of organizations are looking to use and empower their citizen developers to start moving and creating these applications, and having the professional developers focus on innovation and really more kind of on the build and release cycles. We were seeing this at the event. We were seeing that, like, in empowering organizations to be successful, driving towards those results and reducing that skill gap issue was really letting, I think that the efficiency piece that was coming in was really about using the resources for what they could be good at doing, right? Is that what you were thinking when you were seeing that?
Yeah, and there was one of the talks specifically that they were talking about tech alone can't fix the problem, and the people alone can't fix the problem. You have to have the right blend of both. So I think that was a good call out from them, because to your point, that we are trying to make it so that the skills gap issue is, like, the gap gets smaller. We want to make sure that more people can do those jobs and have those high performers focusing on the innovation. But if you don't have the right people and you don't have the right tech and you have bureaucracy weighing you down, what can you do?
Yeah, no, I agree. And in this day of competitive kind of focus, right? There's tons of competition out there, right? And we would be remiss if we didn't talk about AI, right? Because AI was also a big part of this event, because, when we look at it, one of the other areas that I can foresee in the future here is scaling, right? And taking this approach that organizations are looking to do, and GovTech as well, is scale their operations so they can really drive towards the results they're looking for. What we're also seeing in research is 50% of developers organizations are looking at using 50% of developers being potentially replaced by AI. And I predict that that's going to fail. And the reason why is it's not ready yet, right? We're not ready yet. We still need a human in the loop. And I was seeing it as well as when we look at the event, and we were talking about the conversations, and whether it was in the halls or the breakout sessions and such. There was a lot of discussion about, well, is AI going to take my job? Is this efficiency is really going to be the downfall of humans in the loop? And I don't see that being the case, especially not in the near term, right? Not for the next few years here. But yeah, I think that's one of the areas that was interesting.
I agree. I mean, AI obviously was a big point of conversation. We talked a lot about how AI is a tool. It's not going to replace anything. It's just going to make you more efficient. Some of the conversations that I had with the participants there were exactly the opposite of what you had. Nobody was worried about AI taking my job because everybody's just worried about how they're actually going to get approval to use AI. So they're not yet there. We're still talking about how to move off of mainframes and the impact of mainframe spend on our GDP right now. So we're still a couple steps removed in the government aspect of when we're going to actually see AI maybe even taking over jobs. But it's so far down the road. And right now, everybody's just worried about, are they even going to be allowed to use these AI-powered tools in government?
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, there is operational compliance as well, right? Compliance was absolutely a key. Governance, regulation, and compliance was key. And you can imagine at this type of event, that really was one of the key takeaways. Another thing you touched on was mainframes, right? And, when I talk about mainframes, anything that we did, we flew out to Nashville, we had a bank transaction. We were doing something on a mainframe, right? And in our practice that we talk about in AppDev, we talk about past, present, future, heritage applications running on current configurations, running on what's happening in the future. And when I think about mainframes, there's a place, right? That place for mainframes is a system of record, right? And modernization that, I was hearing the same tone at the event, that modernization using these mainframe applications is really about building like a new front end application, like a React application of the front end as a new system of engagement, accessing that system of record, right? And that will also help with scaling and driving towards results, right? But like one of the things that I talked to mainframe in general, I kind of align it to this consolidation play that's happening across the platforms, right? Mm-hmm. And when we look at the SDLC, the software development lifecycle, and we look at how organizations are growing and moving, right now there's a lot of bespoke solutions that are in the DevOps kind of practices, right? Everybody's happy with their own tools, their own compliance, they're using their own things to make things work. What I predict in 2025 is, we're going to see half the organizations in 2025 basically abandon the use of these best-of-breed bespoke solutions in favor of a unified approach. Now, we were talking to a couple of vendors recently, briefings this week, that were saying you don't have to give up. You can have your cake and eat it too, right? You don't have to give up using your bespoke solution, but you do need to have a way to collaborate with your peers, a way to work within a unified platform. And I think that's really what is going on. I think that when I think of something like mainframe as the underlying architecture, from a DevOps perspective, from an application delivery perspective, I really don't care what's underneath as long as it works, right? And if it's consolidated, it's better for environmental sustainability and governance, and you can have it on compliance and regulations in a platform. If mainframe's the right way to go, great. If the next generation of platforms is the right way to go, even better. But that's kind of what I think. What were your thoughts?
Yeah, so one of the talks that we had at Prodacity was with Palantir, and it was very clear from Brian specifically that this event was not supposed to be about vendors selling products, but he is such a big proponent of the build versus buy. Yeah. Should we build, should we buy? And in government, obviously, your budgets are your budgets. You're not bringing in money, you're just spending money. So you have your budget, and are you going to spend it on maintaining this, custom system, or are you going to buy? And so a big part of the Palantir talk was that they are using the platform themselves, which means they have to continuously improve their platform. So bringing back AI, they added AI for internal use case. And then somebody came to them saying, hey, we want AI. And they're like, oh yeah, we have that actually. So it wasn't, necessarily Palantir saying buy our stuff, but it's just that they have, and all these vendors that are the buy approach versus the build approach have what you're looking for. And that's a good way to go. It reduces the skills gap, it reduces the complexity, it brings you onto one platform. So I thought that was really interesting. But then I want to go back to the mainframe part of the conversation that a couple of the talks really merged together on this. That one was talking about how you have to do the digital twin first, make sure that you have a mirror of it before you can start moving forward and modernizing. But then another talk said that as soon as you modernize, you have a legacy platform. It's something new coming out tomorrow, there's something new happening. So as soon as you modernize, as soon as you reach that next step, you're already legacy again. So always be focusing on modernizing. What's the next small step that we can take? And that was another big part of the event was do this in small chunks. You don't have to do it all at once.
Yeah.
By the time that you roll out, a 2-year project, you're still legacy on it. So what can you do today to improve, going into the CFC life cycle, continuous improvement?
Yeah, absolutely. And here's a little secret: you're always modernizing, right? I mean, it's just no matter what happens, right? I mean, it's you're always going to be, once you're done, you're on a treadmill. You keep running. I want to go back to the Palantir conversation. One of the things that I found interesting is I did find that talk very, very interesting because the build versus buy approach is something that I encounter quite frequently with the briefings that I'm on, right? And a lot of times what happens is organizations, exactly to your point, they'll look at what they're trying to achieve, right? And they go, okay, well, our bench strength, we can flex our technical muscle and we can build it ourselves, right? And that's fine if you have the bench to do it. And the reality of this is skill gap, resources, et cetera, are all preventing people from doing that accurately. But if you do build it yourself, the devils are in the details. If you forget something, that's a problem. The other thing is if you build it yourself, you maintain it, you own it yourself, right? So working with a vendor that specializes in what you're trying to achieve not only accelerates your rapid time to value, but it also takes that burden off your shoulders from managing them. It lets you focus on your business. I am a proponent of open source. I am a proponent of building something that works for your bespoke solution. However, if it's a platform or a tedious task or something that you want to drive forward, let vendors kind of help you accelerate your goals. Because again, the other thing you have is with open source, you want to work with vendors that sponsor open source projects, but also offer enterprise level support, right? Because that way you're not going at it alone. So that's just kind of a little bit of, I was listening to that pitch, and build versus buy is always something that comes up with organizations trying to grow their environment.
No, absolutely. I think that your points are spot on, but open source especially, and we have KubeCon coming up. That's going to be one of our next events. But the security aspects that we see in open source, the security added layers that you get in the buy approach instead of the build approach. A big part of the Prodacity event was on DevOps, platform engineering, shifting left. How do we get security quicker in the loop?
Yeah.
And with everybody's trying to shift left. I know one of your recent talks, I think you're talking to Jack, where you talked about shift everywhere. We can't just shift left, we have to shift everywhere. And having these platforms that already have that ingrained, that they have their security team working on that for you, so that you're not having to try to figure out how to have your developers writing code, your security teams, when are they going to get into the loop? Where do we put them? So I think that's probably my biggest, the build versus buy.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I was also kind of reflecting on the predictions that I have, and what you see in our research is, supply chain attacks and zero-day vulnerabilities are increasing. So what we're seeing is over 60% of organizations are looking to embed DevSecOps as a fundamental requirement as they move forward. So the automation of vulnerability scanning, continuous compliance monitoring, security training embedded into the CI/CD pipeline is really where it's kind of driving towards protecting those applications infrastructure. We were seeing all of this at the event. We were seeing it just, not just the data. It's one thing to sit here and go through the data, the surveys that we do and all the research that we have. It's another thing to see it in real life and see the customers actually doing it and then validating and go, yep, that's what we need. So I think that's something that, for the audience here that's watching, something to consider that, if you're not thinking about DevSecOps as part of your overall CI/CD pipeline in the SDLC, that's a big factor as well, as you probably already know. But With that said, I think there's a lot more here as well. What are your thoughts on the next session that was going on?
The next session after security?
Yeah.
So one of the other sessions that I really liked was on friction. So this kind of goes back to where we started with the bureaucracy, the red tape. I think this is a good place to kind of wrap this up on as well. The friction that we're experiencing in government. I mean, so much of government is still a vertical structure. Most public or most private organizations have gone horizontal.
Yeah.
So we have our teams, we have more efficiency, within the DevOps practice, we have started to see that shift left. We see teams working together and being a lot more efficient, but in government, there's still so much hierarchy. And so that's that friction. And so if we're continuously weighted down by bottlenecks and waiting for approvals, we're not going to be innovative. We're not going to stay ahead of the front as Prodacity wants us to be. So we need to reduce those bottlenecks. We need to get more horizontal in the government. And I think that we're starting to see that happen.
Yeah, we are. And I think one of the data points that I would kind of throw out there is in our recent research, we found that friction is definitely a problem, right? And we see that in 2024, for looking at the CI/CD pipeline and exploring it, our respondents of a recent survey said that they use anywhere between 6 and 15 different tools. 75% of respondents say that. And their desire is to move to a full unified platform or a full stack observability solution as well. And also, this is a factor, 54% of respondents said that in 2025, they want to move away from that distributed kind of environment and move to a more of a unified view to reduce that friction. So I think it's important.
But with the friction, even if we're coming down to a unified view, even if we're getting more efficiency on the actual process, we're moving through the SDLC, the CI/CD pipeline faster, that then comes back to the people. We're talking about the technology, we have the processes, we have the right tech, we're condensing our platforms. But if you only have one person in testing that has a backlog of 100 actions, you're not actually increasing efficiency. You're not getting code out the door fast, one of the KPIs that we see all the time.
No, absolutely. It does come down to people, process, and technology. That's how this all evolves, right? That's how we started the conversation. And I think that's a good place to kind of end the conversation. Sam, I want to thank you for your time today. Your insights in the show was really, really valuable. I think that, you were running around. I saw you out there talking to everyone out there. It was great event. I want to thank the audience for watching our session today. There's a lot to think about and consider as part of this event. We have a number of assets that we've followed up on and written about. You can find that on our site, as well as links within the theCUBE research.com. Thank you again, and have a great day.